90s gamers, what was a problem about it back then that modern gamers won't understand? No save option. Gotta beat the game in one shot or leave the console on all night. I had a friend who left Sonic 2 on for 2 weeks as he went on holiday. It was fine. Honestly, the impressive part is that they left it running for 2 weeks and came back without the game having done something weird. So many games throw a hissy fit if left running for an extremely long time. Getting stuck on a game and having no way of knowing what you're meant to do. 4 hours. Unless you bought a walkthrough guidebook. In Central Europe internet wasn't that popular yet in 2005 and there were no public hotspots like today in restaurants or train stations. I had a PSP before my household had internet. When I got stuck at a game and couldn't progress for hours, I would take my PSP outside and look for unprotected Wi-Fi in my neighborhood, then Google for tips using the slow PSP browser, sitting behind a bush at the edge of someone's property reloading the page because the connection would only have 1 bar and regularly drop. Installing a game on PC from 26 floppy disks and having disk 23 of 26 be corrupt and unreadable. I spit and rubbed the scratch on disk 4 of my friend's Space Quest 3 disks. I must have hit retrieve over 200 times when it asked me if I wanted to abort, retrieve, fail. Probably sat there for 15 minutes trying to get it to work. And then it did. And the game was playable. That was a good day. Commitment. I love it. Needing to keep the manual for copyright protection. On page 53, what is the 4th word on the page? The codec frequency should be on the back of the box. I spent ages in MGS as a kid trying to examine the disk item in game before a friend at school told me it was on the physical game case he had lent me. When I rented the game from Blockbuster, a staff member had written it on paper and slid it behind the plastic sheath. Bless that person. Freaking Star Tropics map. I rented that, spent hours trying to figure out what I was missing. Writing down a 72 character password to save your progress, and the developer uses a fancy font, so some numbers and letters look alike. This is the only way to save your game, and if you get it wrong, sorry about your luck. I'm looking at you. Golden Sun. Not even a 90s game, but they pulled this to the extreme. Shout out to GameFAQs guides with the save code for the perfect game code. Also, check out /r/goldensun for some nostalgia. Pause game, turn mouse over, click off cover, remove ball and clean rollers, reinsert ball and cover, continue game. The worst part was having to hard boil yet another egg for the hardened yolk. Dark days. 4-player split screen on a 20-inch court TV. I remember when we got a link cable so that we could bring our PS1 over to our friend's house to play Command and Conquer on their 2 TVs using both our PlayStations. And it was the coolest thing ever. Oh god, I'm remembering the 16-player Halo parties in my friend's basement now, with 4 quad-screen giant court TVs and metal folding chairs. Spending 6 months stuck at the same spot in the game, because there is no walkthrough to tell you what to do. Yes, the Lion King game and the monkeys in the tree level. If Game Genie didn't exist, I would have never gotten to enjoy that game outside the first level. You sat wherever the cord on the controller would let you play from. My couch was too far away, so I played on the floor a lot as a kid. Asking your parents to use the dial-up internet so you can download or share a demo of a game. It says it should only take a half hour. No, I'm expecting so and so to call. Okay. Or someone picking up the phone and nuking the connection and download. My mom, I swear, made it a point to pick up the phone when I was playing Diablo 1. When gameplay speed was based on CPU speed, a fast computer might be too fast to play a game. We had a turbo button on our Gateway 486 that let you swap to a lower CPU speed to make certain DOS games playable. One of the King's Quest games has this. There's a puzzle where you're supposed to figure out what to do with a lead stick of dynamite before it blows up and kills you. Except that the timer is based on your CPU speed, and even though the game is available on Steam today, it was never patched to fix this issue for much faster modern computers. So basically the dynamite blows up and kills you literally in the same second your character picks it up. I played through it again a few years ago and had to download a CPU limiter to get past that puzzle. I learned English playing King's Quest as a 6-year-old. Channel 3. Oh man. That Pavlovian chemical rush when the screen went from the black and white static with the KSSSHHHHHH sound. Then you move the on-off slider on the SNES to the on position as it made that loud click and the screen turned black, quickly followed by that simple chime noise with the words Nintendo presents on the screen. Chills. Trying to get the drivers to work on your 3.11/Win95 setup before automatic driver detection and download was a thing. So painful. It was better than the first go at plug and play, though. Remember how we used to call it plug and pray? Setting up the sound in a DOS game without knowing all parameters. Set blaster equals A220i5D1T3. Oh god this. Also having to make sure you had enough memory available of the first 640k could be fun. Got mine to 622k. Buying a crappy game because the box art looked good. Or not buying an awesome game cause the box art was hot garbage. That's right, Mega Man. Those rare occasions where the best looking game box actually contained one of the best games. Legend of Zelda. Can't believe no one has yet mentioned losing the copy protection method or some component of it. I remember SimCity came with a book list with scrambled text that was only readable through a set of red filter glasses they gave you. Or what's the third word on the fourth paragraph, page 36 of the manual? I remember one which was like a list of verification codes, but the paper on that page was dark brown, so you couldn't photocopy it. It also made it very hard to read, but that's less important to them, I guess. Maniac Mansion. I remember the Nukem door that requires a code from pages printed on red paper, impossible to photocopy. Needing a controller pack in order to save a game. For a while, I didn't have one and just had to start a new game every time I turned the N64 on. Also, the rumble pack. Because your controller didn't just vibrate on its own. Star Fox 64. In the era of PS1 and PS2, not having a memory card sucked. Even if you did have one, they had a finite amount of space, so when you needed to make a new save, you'd have to delete something if you didn't want to buy another memory card. To add to this, games where there was no memory card manager when you came to make a save. So even if you would have happily deleted that old save of another game to make room for your new game, you couldn't. And so all your progress was lost needlessly. Leave the console on, hook the TV back up to cable, and hope your parents don't notice the light on the console and turn it off to save electricity. Getting my PS1 shipped and having a big list of games that my mum would have me pick through so she could buy them off the dodgy guy. Thinking about it now though, people dealing with shipping PS1 and games were probably nerds, but I thought it was dodgy AF when I was young. I think those dramatic piracy as a big bad crime ads got to us because I remember thinking the same. The guy my friend's dad knows who chips PlayStations sounded like a mobster or something. But it was likely just someone like me now, not exactly a hardened criminal. Yo UWOULDNT do WN low add a car. Not really a problem, but nowadays we don't get little booklets in the inside of the disc case that went over the controls, the backstory to the plot, the enemies and vehicles, etc. I used to enjoy reading those booklets on the way home from picking up a new game at Toys R Us. Getting hyped for the game on the way home, reading the manual, looking at the screenshots on the back of the case, and imagining how the game would play. There was a certain magic about that. Mucking with DOS memory management to make the game work. Pirating stuff was the norm. The worst thing a malware could do is to sneakily encrypt your hard disk, one half, but its author only wrote it to flex his programming skills, not to hold your data hostage or thwart the enemy's nuclear weapons program. Getting stuck in Dark Forces and literally can't play some other titles because you have a monochrome monitor. Anything above 320x240 with high frame rates were a pipe dream in 3D games. Loading Uniband editing Duke 3D's config file to play the game in 512x384, which looked like 640x480 on our monochrome 14-inch monitor, but could reach a stable 15 FPS on a 5x86 with 16 MB RAM. getting the best upgrades you can get with your allowance, and the game is still slow. Raging when the dreaded "this program requires Microsoft Windows" message appears. Despair upon the realization that Windows 95 will be required to play the newest and hottest titles, and your current PC is already obsolete. Downloading newer video drivers was a must to get fast 320x 240 modes in DirectX. Haha, I remember my dad teaching me how to take lines out of config point size or auto exec point bat to free up RAM, so I could play Warcraft 2. Wow, forgot all about that. Hell yeah, Windows 3.11 made it impossible to run Warcraft 2 without a separate version of auto exec point bat. Configuring auto exec point bat and config point size, or needing to make a special boot disk for specific games. I recall having a menu, which was a later DOS feature I like, for TIE Fighter cause it couldn't load the regular Sound Blaster driver and the flight stick driver. It ran better than through Windows, but everything else was fine. Him and point size. Swapping disks. Hours spent messing with load order in config point size and auto exec point bat to tweak every last byte of extended and expanded RAM in the boot sequence. IRQs, coax, dummy loads and 10 base T networking. No walkthroughs. Finding and downloading game demos at 2400 baud from a BBS. The hours spent on config point size and auto exec point bat files is largely responsible for my 25+ year id career. There's some argument to be made that the Oregon Trail generation, late Gen X through early millennial, is the most computer literate generation. The generation who came before us didn't have the opportunity to deeply learn computers, and the generation after us didn't need to. Split screen cheating was a constant complaint when I was still living at home. Once I got to college was about the time Halo Sec came out, and we just expected that if you couldn't follow 4 screens at once, tough crap. If this is nostalgic for you, check out a game called Screen Cheat, split screen PvP shooter, where everyone's invisible, and the only way to figure out where your opponent is to look at their screen and try to figure it out based on their surroundings. My buddies and I did something like that in Halo Reach. You can adjust movement speed and active camouflage in PvP, so we set speed to minimum with the best camo and had the slowest weapons, only Spartan lasers, and had to try to figure out where anyone was and try to dodge the slowly charging laser. So sometimes you have to blow into a cartridge to make it work and find that sweet spot with the Northeast's front loader. This is how I know you actually were a 90s gamer. Our sweet spot at the cartridge just barely pushed in. The easiest way to accomplish this was to have it sticking out 1/4 inch as you recessed it. Then the lip of the Northeasts would force the cartridge forward just enough to get it all the way down. Lag shooting on a 56K modem. Games like MechWarrior had awful netcode that didn't account for latency. I just shake my head when people today claim ATMS is unplayable. You'll have no idea. Yeah, you have to shoot the empty space to kill them, lol. Depending on the speed they ran, to the possibility of them turning while you laid down the AK-20 rounds. The MechWarrior pilots of the 90s were true masters in lag shooting. I miss those days. Playing Gamma Boy by the light of randomly placed street lamps as you ride in the car at night. I cannot believe this is so far down. That was the worst. Your parents driving somewhere far at night and you can't play Gamma Boy unless you bought one of those fancy attached lights. Running out of quarters at the arcade. One of the last times I went to the arcade, a friend and I spent a good $10 playing Gauntlet Dark Legacy. Family went to Disney World when I was 11 and our hotel had an arcade. Dad gave us each $20 in quarters and we blew most of it beating the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle game. Worth it. Now I go to the barcade. Figuring out what command to type in a Sierra Quest. Get baton. Get stick. Get nightstick. Even more fun when you speak UK rather than US English, so the word you need is one you've never even heard, and you can't just Google what Americans call a freaking truncheon. I raise your UK English with being a non-native speaker, but I did learn a lot of English and other cultural references, leisure suit Larry adult verification questions. I remember playing the original Legend of Zelda. That game is hard as heck. I've played other Northeast's games through emulators and Switch Online eShop. Sega games, hard as heck. Nintendo, hard as heck. Hell, growing up and playing PS2 and Xbox games were difficult. These days if you get frustrated enough, by the time you start searching for a walkthrough, not only has someone already complete most of what you're playing, but also posted and wrote a detailed walkthrough. Old school games are hard. Some didn't have maps, saves, difficulty levels, or lives. Most Nintendo games were hard as frick. Like, I would rather play Dark Souls than the speeder bike level of Battletoads. The first Mega Man would wreck you. I like Dark Souls, but it's nowhere near the level of Northeast's bullcrap difficulty. I still remember those eagles in Ninja Gaiden. If Dark Souls was made in the Northeast's era, they'd start you with 3 lives, no save/passwords, and kick you to the title screen when you got a game over because an off-screen skeleton knocked you into a pit. Your parents bought you a console and games, but didn't know you needed a memory card. So you just played the beginning of every game for a month. Played the raid on the first Mako reactor in FF7 about 20 times before I got a memory card, lol. That your knockoff copy of Crash Bandicoot you bought for PS1 off the market won't work in your chipped PlayStation. Or that there isn't enough space on the living room floor to spread the star map out for Frontier, Elite 2. Having to smash a game in one full weekend as it had to go back to Blockbuster on Sunday night. Losing the ripped out cheat code page from the PlayStation magazine. Lemmings cheats stolen by my mate. Cheeky little crap is still a slimy gamer to play with. Guaranteed aimbot twat. Haha, never steal a man's Lemmings cheats, low blow. Buying a finished game. Almost all games these days are beta when they are released, and alpha when they are early access. They push their unfinished turd out the door, then release updates all year to give us new skins and dumb crap, but never actually fix the bugs. I remember a time when you could buy a finished, playable game. Back in the day, if a game sucked, it sucked forever. If there was a game-breaking bug or glitch, you just wouldn't finish the game. Renting a crappy game at Blockbuster and being stuck with it all weekend was the worst. I worked at Blockbuster, and it was annoying having some kid call up to ask if copy number 3 of Simon's Quest was in stock, because that's the one he had his save file on. Lol, did kids just think no one was going to play or mess with their saved game? Well, the believability of the graphics. Every new generation of consoles broke that reality of realism, but in the 90s, that crap looked real good. Obviously the side-scroller games like Rayman and Commander Keen were cartoony, but games like Star Wars Jedi Knight Dark Forces, 007 GoldenEye, Star Wars Pod Racer, Lost, Ocarina of Time, and Tony Hawk Pro Skater captivated us with its third graphics. In some way we knew they could eventually get better, but it was near impossible to imagine until a new console came out and defy what had come before. An added bonus was getting a pretty dope Game Chex Quest in our cereal box. Sometimes, some cereal companies would just slap a full-ass games in the cereal box. That was dope. Saving and writing down save codes to resume your game progress. Getting a Game Genie for chests, and having the cheat code manuals. 3D games in the mid-90s, graphics, Metal Gear Solid, GoldenEye etc. We were blown away, but most kids now would be horrified. Not really a problem I guess, just a different perspective. Absolutely. GoldenEye was a beautiful game. What blew me away was Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Going from Link's Awakening on OG Gamma Boy to 3D, glorious color in OOT was really something. Loading times. You ever play a game on a cassette tape? 20-minute load time. Get game over? Another 20-minute load time. So funny because you can tell how things like this are important to people who went through that. My brother still games fairly regularly and is always trying to get me to get a new system and join the fun. Anytime he's talking about his new system or the new game or whatever, he points out dude like zero load time. Literally less than 5 seconds and you're playing 2 seconds, maybe. And I'm like shit, the future is now. Not necessarily games, but reading/writing CDS/DVDS. Remember when your computer had like let's pick randomly 3 of the 4 combinations of being able to read/write CD/DVD on one write speed with buffer it up at the end. Writing 10 disks cost some other program took buffer space. Nero was free once, and it wasn't called Nero 15 or Prime. Okay. Shut down every other program on the system. Now, start the burn. Now everyone walk calmly and carefully away from the computer without causing any vibrations. But, hey, 2x speed. Many gamers like the retro style game nowadays. In our time we didn't have a choice. Modern retro style games don't follow the hardware limitations they are trying to simulate. They just reduce the pixel resolution and slap a retro label on it. They still keep the modern color palette consisting of millions of colors. For example, on many systems tiles could only have 4 colors. On modern retro style colors are essentially unlimited, or might be limited to 256 on authentically styled retro games. On other systems, there would be a limit to the number of colors on a scan line, or the screen's palette was limited to 16 colors. There was also a limit on the number of hardware sprites and their sizes. All of those were done because there was a hard limit on RAM and ROM space, which effectively doesn't exist on today's machines. I don't mind gamers preferring low resolution games, but the community needs to stop pretending they are anything like games that had to deal with real hardware limitations. Anecdote. In 1992 I bought a Star Trek computer adventure game. It was similar to Sierra games of the day. It came on 5.25 inches floppy disks. I don't remember how many, but it was a big game for the time, so it was several disks. Long story short, after several hours of trying I couldn't get the game to install onto my 386SX25MHZ PC. I ended up calling their tech support and spoke to a guy on the phone. He was technically knowledgeable, and judging by his accent he was in the same country that I was. He determined that one of my floppy disks must be faulty. He was going to replace the entire game for me, but in order to do that, he needed me to cut the first disc in half with scissors and mail it to them in an envelope. This would apparently prove that I was legit and not just trying to scam a free copy of the game. I did that, and a couple of weeks later I had a new copy of the game in the mail. It worked fine this time. So, in 1992, actually useful customer service from a game company, although it was slow and convoluted as hell. These days I would have just refunded the game to my Steam wallet without a second thought. Even though I had to use the postal service and wait 4 weeks in 1992, I can't imagine trying to frick around with a game company's phone support these days. It would be a nightmare, if it were even possible at all. It wasn't popular. Look, it was popular, but it was popular for nerds and children. There was still a huge stigma with gaming and being another. Even among kids, the ones who played video games were seen as dweebs and less popular than the athletic kids. Now, a kid I went to high school with that was an athlete made $50 million streaming video games. I remember not really being open at all about being a gamer in middle school, 6th grade, 1991. In elementary school, 1-5, it was fine to discuss video games, but once 6th grade came along it seemed to bring a kiddie stigma to gaming, and was definitely the nerdy/dorky clique to be in, especially from a girl's viewpoint. But then in 1992, Mortal Kombat came out and all of that changed in my area. I was in 7th grade and everyone was talking video games. Just about every kid found out that any kid was possibly a gamer and had just kept quiet about it for a couple years. There was a Sega crew and a Nintendo crew and even some TurboGrafx kids. PC guys were always a notch above, but we all could talk gaming for hours on end. It was amazing and changed my world big time. Found a lot of new friends and also found out that some people in the jock or cool kids clique were also into music like Metallica, Rage Against the Machine, and not just jumping on the Nirvana grunge trend. Sorry, took a trip down memory lane with that one. Thanks for this comment though. Batter is dying on your Gamma Boy at an inopportune moment, or when your little brother thinks it's funny to use your Master Ball in Pokemon Red to catch a Magikarp then save your game. I actually still have the Gamma Boy and all my games to show both my boys when they're a little bit older. I can't wait to see their reaction and record a video of it. I'm expecting them to tap the screen or look at the picture and be all confused, like what the hell is this? My mate accidentally poured Stella into my SNES. Afterwards, any vibration would cause it to turn itself off. I would have to frantically save when I heard someone coming up the stairs, because the moment they reached the top, dead. There were no patches or hotfixes. For better or worse, the game shipped as is, and that was it. Fast forward bit, in multiplayer PC games would get patches. But it wasn't the automatic update like it is today. You'd need to make sure you were running the same version as your buddies to join the server that they're in. And this was when you had 256 KDSL, so it took a while to find, download, and install the patch. Specifically Battlefield 1942 comes to mind. Physical media in general. Today's generation won't ever understand the pain of dropping a PS1 disc to of Final Fantasy VII, causing me to be unable to advance in the game. You used to be able to go to Walmart without a receipt back then and just claim you bought it recently and it was broken, and they'd replace it. They didn't scan the purchase of the item yet at that point, and had a really open policy about returns and exchanges. I got my FF8 copy and my PS1 replaced that way when I was a teenager, and also a memory card. Yes, Reddit, I know it was wrong,